Welcome into the Paul Farrington Show. Thursday, January 30th, recording on a Wednesday night here. You know, the month has flown by, Ziggy. It's the Super Bowl's in 10 days. Eagles and Chiefs kicking it off in New Orleans. Today we have a mailbag. We have a bunch of really fun questions coming up. Ziggy and I were just talking about how much we enjoyed the questions that came in. Remember, you can always submit mailbag questions by going to our community page. We usually put up a post the week we do the mailbag, and you could put your questions in there. If you can't find that, you can always DM us on Instagram or Twitter or really basically anywhere. Leave a comment on any video and just write mailbag. We'll try and find it. If you're new here, welcome into the show. This is how it usually runs. Ziggy and I are doing this. We have Jack, who's also normally with the show, and producer Zach. They weren't able to make it to this one. If you've been watching all season, you know all that. Thanks for sticking around. We got one game left. It helps us a ton if you hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. Subscribing to the show would be great. We're trying to get to 20,000. We're almost there. If you have any comments, feel free to leave as many as you want in the comment section. We do see them all. We can't respond to everyone, but we see every single one. And a lot of times it will respond to a lot of them. We respond to a lot of them, and a lot of times it'll impact what we put in our future episodes. You can't watch on YouTube. You can always listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And the best way to take in reels are on Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter, just to keep up with other stuff for the show. Ziggy, after that long introduction, with you over here at the University of Virginia, how's your day going? Your Thursday?
You know, it's my Wednesday.
Or your Wednesday night. Your Wednesday night.
It's I gave my students a tough lecture today, and I think they picked up about 20% of it. Talked about Cartesian physics. If anybody in the comments knows what Cartesian physics is, go in right there. Impenetrability, vortical motion, centrifugal forces, occasionalism, all that stuff.
You're blowing my mind with all this stuff already. You know, it's funny. Jack had off for Chinese New Year today in the teaching world. I don't know how many people had off for Chinese New Year, but that's something that I would like to start celebrating more. All of the Chinese holidays, the holidays for Judaism, everything. I love the more holidays, the better for me personally. So Jack enjoyed a nice day off for Chinese New Year. Do you know what year it is? Is it year of the
snake? The
snake? Oh, all right. Year of the snake. So today's a mailbag. Again, some great questions here. We'll jump right into it. From M.2, one off season ago, Ziggy made the comment that he doesn't think Packers fans would hate getting Davante Adams back, even though their wide receiver room looked good. 1 year later, with Davante's situation being what it is and the Packers wide receiver room development faltering, I'm curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are on this match.
Yeah, so I think I said last year I thought adding Davante Adams when things inevitably flamed out with the Jets might work out. And what happened? Things flamed out inevitably with the Jets. The Davante Adams situation in Oakland or in Vegas and with the Jets didn't go any better. Like, it was a disaster season for him. And still, despite all of the chaos, he had a pretty decent season numbers-wise, right? He put up a fair number of yards. He caught some touchdowns. He had a good time. Here's the thing if you're Green Bay, and I know M.2 said this in their comments, and they're right. The Packers don't necessarily like going after what you might call last contract free agents, guys who are at the very end of their career. I think the Packers and Davante Adams would both be amenable to a reunion. And most of your other options, whether it's trading for DK Metcalf and owing him a huge extension this year or next year, adding Tee Higgins, every other option Davante Adams is more expensive. And for the next 1 or 2 years, I'm not sure is going to get you better production. Davante Adams is a great receiver. 32 is on the older side, but he's not a guy who relies on incredible athleticism to win. Obviously, he's athletic, but he's so much more than that. He's aged into his game pretty well. I think if you're the Packers sitting at this wide receiver room saying we need a wide receiver one, the cost for Tee Higgins and DK Metcalf is so much more that I think Davante could make a lot of sense.
Do you really think it's that much? Like if I asked you right now for Tee Higgins with the larger money or Davante lower salary, but again, he's 32 years old, would you pick Davante Adams over Tee Higgins?
I think that Davante Adams you can probably get a 2-year deal out of. I don't think you need to sign him for a huge term. Tee Higgins, somebody's going to be offering him a 4 or 5 year deal.
No, but like I think I'd prefer to have Tee Higgins if I were a Packer fan. I'd be willing to shell out the money. They have a decent amount of money saved for this year. Like, I would probably lean that way over with Tee Higgins.
I think with Tee Higgins, you're going to get stuck in a huge bidding war. And sort of like Calvin Ridley last year, there's going to be some team that's willing to way overpay because they're desperate. Davante Adams is a great player, but I think because of his age, he's not going to attract that kind of attention. And I think a reunion with the Packers is probably something he'd be excited about. Whereas Tee Higgins, I don't think feels any particular way.
I get what you're saying. I think Davante probably would be excited. At least some of the things you've seen with him in media lately, he's made some indications he'd be open to a reunion. At least that's what I'm picking up. But Tee Higgins is 27 years old. Like he's in the prime of his career. And the Packers window is not just 1 or 2 years. Like I think as long as it's kind of who said it's the prime, it's open as long as I'm playing. Was that Burrow, right? Like the window's as long as I'm playing. As long as Jordan Love's playing at a high level, that window's open. I think I'd rather make the investment in someone that you actually believe can reach the elite receiver tier. And Tee Higgins is very good, but has never really had the chance to shine as a one with Jamar Chase there most of his career. I'd rather go in on T if you believe in him. If you don't, then stay away. But I'd rather go in on T and have 3-4 years of Tee Higgins being really good, and he's not even as old as Davante is now.
Well, Paul, that's a very nice way, saying he's never had a chance to be a wide receiver one since Jamar Chase is there. What you mean is, besides setting aside his rookie season, where he had a good rookie year, 900 yards, a handful of touchdowns, we've never seen whether he can be a wide receiver one. Davante Adams, there's no doubt about it. When he is playing his best football, he is a guy who can dominate. He can be that guy. DK Metcalf, similar, we've seen, I know he had Tyler Lockett next to him, but we've seen he can be that guy. The risk with Tee Higgins, and I think why I don't want to be the team that's willing to pay him the most amount of money, is he can be very good as a wide receiver one. But the Packers, we talked about it in our last show, what went wrong for them. They need elite talent. They don't just need to stack good players on the team. They've got plenty of good players. Even in the receiver room, I know Watson probably won't be back until the playoffs next year. I know Romeo Dobbs has had his ups and downs, so is Jaden Reed, but they've got decent players in there. I think Higgins would be the best of them, clearly. But they need elite players. And I'm not sure that Tee Higgins, even though he's a great receiver and he's one of the best, he's clearly, I think, the best number 2 in the NFL, except maybe whoever you pick of Puka or Cooper Kupp. I don't see it. I'm not sure he's the wide receiver one, and we know Davante Adams can be. So if you can get Davante Adams on a team-friendlier deal, I think it can make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to argue against Davante. If Davante wanted to go there, I'd be for it. Like if I were a Packer fan, I'd be happy getting Davante Adams. I think you bring up a valid question too. Can Tee Higgins actually be a stud receiver worth that money? And that's kind of something that you're gambling on a bit. But when Tee Higgins is healthy, and he hasn't been healthy for a large portion of his career, he's awesome. Like he has been awesome. So I think that you're looking at bringing in T and having that opportunity of him reaching a ceiling that he might not even know he's capable of, or older Davante. That's why I lean more T. But yeah, if you get Davante Adams, it's risky, and that his age is a factor, but you're not hopefully paying the mother load. So I get what you're saying.
I don't know. When Tee Higgins, he played 10 games this year. He played 12 games last year. I will wonder if the Packers sign him, we'll see how Packers fans feel about him missing half the season for a third year in a row.
Yeah, no, that's that. But when he plays, he's very good.
Yeah, if you're a Packers, I'm actually curious, because last year when I gave that Davante Adams take, the comments flooded with people saying we don't want him. There's no way we want him back with the way he left. He was just a bag chaser. He deserves what he gets. I'm curious. I'd like to know what you think if you're a Packers fan in the comments, actually, if you still feel that way, if that's the vibe, because I get the sense that now that there's been another year of distance and the wide receiver room hasn't worked out how fans were hoping, they don't have 3 or 4 elite wide receivers in there, that people are a lot more amenable to having him back. But I'm not sure if that's the pulse or not.
Yeah, let us know if you want Tee Higgins, Davante Adams, Chris Godwin is a free agent. Chris Godwin is having the best year of his career.
I don't think Chris Godwin is leaving.
I would be shocked too, but I'm just saying, like he's out there. Metcalf. Let us know any of these guys. Man, I do just think Higgins, his prototype is great. He's perfect. One
of the most underrated players in the NFL.
Yeah. All right, let's move on here to Ryan Drescher says, I'm here to toot my own horn. Before the season, I said that the move for Saquon could make him an MVP candidate and likely Offensive Player of the Year. Here we are now. Another great season in the books. Well done, lads. All North rivals are out, so I don't have to sweat and can enjoy the playoffs. All I need is the Eagles out for true peace. Dude, totally agree with you, Ryan. Philly's got to go. We said the whole time the Eagles were the one team we didn't want winning the Super Bowl. And they keep finding ways, man.
Here, the problem for me is the Eagles are one of two teams I didn't want to see the Chiefs win yet again. So like this is the worst possible. We've seen this in the comments a lot. A lot of the mailbag questions are about this too. This might be the single worst possible Super Bowl combination if you're not a fan of either of these two teams.
Hashtag boycott the Super Bowl is trending. Like people are done.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
At Memphis97, what's your favorite anime and your favorite song? Do you watch anime, Ziggy?
I've seen a single anime in my entire life.
Just me too. All right. What do you watch?
It was called Your Lie in April. When I was in high school, my friends were like, bro, you got to watch this. So I sucked it up and did.
Did you like it?
It was all right.
I have to say, I actually really like My Hero Academia. I think that's a really fun show. It's an anime. I don't watch any of the other. I know there's like Demon Slayer and Attack on Titan, and people are really into it. And I'm sure that's a realm of possibility for me to enter into that world. But My Hero Academia, I stumbled in when my brother and sister were watching and just got hooked on it. I really enjoyed it. I used to make fun of anime, but I enjoy it. Favorite song?
Even though I haven't seen a lot of the shows, I am a big fan of Shinkai films. 5 centimeters per second rocks.
Yeah, I do know that you love. The Japanese films, and hey, I'm a big Godzilla guy. If we're going into Japanese cinema, favorite song. My favorite song. I mean, it's one of those things that's always rotating, but I'd say the general one that I'd say I love Thunder Road from Bruce Springsteen. That's always been towards the top of my list.
Am I supposed to get my favorite song now? Is this how the mailbag works?
Yeah, they're asking Animan's favorite song.
Fair enough. We'll get to the favorite album question later, I guess. For me, it's probably Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst, Kendrick Lamar.
Did not see that coming.
What do you mean you didn't see that coming?
I did not see Kendrick Lamar coming.
Song.
Are you excited? So you must be pumped up for the halftime show.
That's all I'm going to watch. That's not true. I'll watch the whole thing.
Yeah. Cameron says, and then we'll get to his question here. I want all three of you to pick your favorite album of all time, any genre. If you can't narrow it down to one, do top three. Would you like to take the honors here?
That's, I guess I'll take top three here because these are three from pretty different albums. I'd go, so obviously, favorite songs that you got to go Good Kid, Mad City. It's Kendrick's best album, no doubt about it. Sorry, losers and haters. Number 2, you got New History Warfare Volume 2, Colin Stetson, great album. And then Karma, Pharoah Sanders.
Man, me and you have very different lists here for top 3 albums.
How many Taylor Swift and Olivia Rodrigo albums are making it in here?
Maybe one. My favorite is Born to Run, because again, going off my favorite song, I love Born to Run. It's only 8 songs, but Born to Run, Thunder Road, Backstreets, 10th Avenue Freeze Out, just an unbelievable album from Bruce. I don't know if this would be 2 or 3. I have to say, if I'm including a Taylor Swift one, I think Red is a great album. I really enjoy the Red album. Yes, I know my music taste is that of a 13-year-old girl and a 60-year-old dude, but it's a good song. It's a good album. If I had to pick one more in there, I might go. I really like Zach Brown's The Foundation. His I can't remember if that's his debut album or not, but that has Toes and Chicken Fried. Harry's House is very good too. Just saying. Divide by Ed Sheeran is phenomenal. There's so many albums to pick. Tied for third amongst those 3. Big E Carry the G says an updated version of which player you would steal from another NFC North team. I guess offensive and defensive, Ziggy.
I think we should limit ourselves to one player because it says which player, not which player on either side of the ball. But this is not a player actually that I think I would have picked, but as a Vikings fan, I think the number one player I want to steal is Aiden Hutchinson. You saw what he was capable of the start of the season. Through 5 games, he had 7.5 sacks, a forced fumble. And I can just imagine on the Vikings defensive line, you put him next to Grenard. I know we've got an embarrassment of riches. We've got plenty of decent guys there. We've got plenty of good guys there. Aiden Hutchinson would give us the best defensive line in the NFL. He's such a good player. And I'm happy as a Vikings fan. I'm happy with our offense. I don't feel like there's any incredible corners I've just got to steal. Our safeties are good, but Aiden Hutchinson, I'm taking over any safety in the division. That's who I'm taking.
I think it comes down to 3 guys or 4 guys. Aiden Hutchinson's one of them because he's just a monster. You're right. If we're talking about the Viking perspective, you do have 3 guys though. You have Grenard, Van Ginkel, and you're hoping Dallas Turner turns into a dude. Hutchinson's so good, he has to be in that conversation. Jalen Johnson has to be there because he's a number one cornerback in the league. And, Jair can also play a role in there, but he just never plays. But I think Jalen Johnson has to be there. Take your pick between Jordan Love and Jared Goff. I'll put Jordan Love in at quarterback. And then Penei Sewell is just so damn good at football that it's hard.
I think Penei Sewell is the best player in the entire division, bar none. But I'm happier with our tackles than our ends.
Look, if you're a Viking fan, I think it has to be Jordan Love. I think you have to go with the quarterback. And if you like Jared Goff more or Caleb, the Viking situation is you get a quarterback, you're set. So I think you have to say Jordan Love. But if you nix the quarterback, I would probably go with Jalen Johnson to get the shutdown cornerback. I think that's a position we have no one right now. We have no one going into free agency. I'd put Penei Sewell next and then Hayden Hutchinson, I think. But man, Hutchinson, he had 7-8 sacks in 4 games.
I mean, if he could play anything like that, he was on pace for 25 sacks in the season.
It's hard not. It's really hard not to
more
take
than
him.
25 sacks in a season. He was playing lights out.
He was playing like T.J. Watt and Myles Garrett, and it's you might be right. You might have to take him and then just build up your try and build up your cornerbacks in the draft and free agency.
It's a lot easier to get decent corners than it is to get, or even good corners. Jalen Johnson's a good corner, but the star edge rusher is one of the most valuable positions.
If I couldn't take a quarterback, you have to go Hutchinson. You have to take, he's one of six or seven guys in the league who are premium pass rusher like that. Yeah, I'd have to go Hutchinson. You're right, but without him, I take Love easy. XX Zeppelin, here's one more of these. What's your dream car? And can you drive manual? Do you have a dream car?
Yes, I can drive manual.
I cannot.
Yeah, I had to learn how to do it when I was thinking of buying a car. Manual Honda Civic.
Manual Honda Civic.
I want a reliable car of great fuel economy with a decent back seat that'll get me where I need to go. That's it.
I think, yeah, I'm not really, I don't have a crazy dream car. Like I don't need to have a Porsche or a Lamborghini or anything like that. I have the Toyota Corolla. Big fan of the Toyota cars. They're very reliable. I'd probably say like whatever a new Lexus sedan would be. Well, one of those. Yeah, I think a nice car. Yeah, really nice car.
If you want to drive a Lamborghini, go to a track and rent one. Then you can actually do something.
I mean, look, a Lexus
driving
is a really
a Lamborghini
nice
to the grocery store is just a stressful experience. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, I would. I mean, I would want to do it, but yeah, it is stressful. I bet. AC says, do you believe the shirtless episode cursed the Vikings? I don't think it is. They're the Vikings. Yeah, they're the Vikings. XX McLovin, what's the biggest change the Vikings, Packers, and Lions need to make to do better next year? Some key goals to focus on. Well, we did an entire episode on this that just came out 2 days ago now. No, yesterday, which is actually today when we're recording. On the entire division, we talked about what went wrong for teams and what they can look to fix heading into the offseason. Would you like to, real quickly, Ziggy, hammer each one, or I can take it?
I mean, the biggest thing the Lions need is to not get injured. That's it. That's what held the team back this year more than anything else. The biggest thing the Packers need is they just need to add some elite talent. They need an elite receiver. They need an elite corner. They need decent pass rush. There's just a couple positions where they need big upgrades. The Vikings, we need a quarterback. It's that simple. If the Vikings can get a Sam Darnold level performance from their quarterback next year, they'll win 11 plus games. If they get a terrible performance from a quarterback, they're not winning more than 6.
Yeah, I think you're totally right with Detroit. Unfortunately, it's just staying healthy. Get your coordinators too. You need 2 new coordinators and then build up the cornerback room. I think you nailed it on the Packers. Those 3 positions in particular. You just need, even if it's not bringing in a new star, have one of your guys who's in there step up, right? Like, especially on the defensive line, you could use one of those guys breaking out. They didn't do it this year. Begs the question, will they ever? And the Vikings, yep, quarterback, totally right. And now you have a ton of holes to plug on defense. So kind of, you have to reload there on the defensive side of the ball. Hugh Pack says, I really should have read that question earlier. Hugh Pack said, is edge rusher, corner, or receiver the most pressing need for Green Bay? So of those 3, which one is the most important?
Edge rusher. The
Edge rusher.
receivers, you can hope they'll be healthier next year, and it's easy to add a mediocre one. Cornerback, you don't necessarily need elite lockdown corners of those safeties. You just need guys who won't get beat every play.
Mm-hmm.
Defensive line. If you've got a great defensive line, it covers up for every other weakness you have on a team except maybe quarterback. They'll get you turnovers. They'll help your cornerbacks because they can get effective pass rush. They can do things against the run. The best ones just generate turnovers. That's what they need. They need the edge rusher. Everything else. There's a reason why those guys are the highest paid non-quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. Unless if they let Jair go, then you just have nothing in that room. So
yeah, well, that's why you don't let Jair go.
Exactly. I agree with you. Okay, we have a couple more questions here around the Packers. I know it's a lot of I put a lot of the Packers questions together so that we can hit them all at the same time. XX McLovin, XX. What's the over-under odds to bet Jack gets a girlfriend this offseason and that she'll be a guest? She won't be a guest, but Jack getting a girlfriend plus 2,000. Plus 2,000. Jack will like flirt with a lot of girls, but having an actual lockdown girlfriend.
That's not his style.
Plus 450. Plus 450. All seriousness, do you truly believe Green Bay goes and gets a vet wide receiver? DK, Davante, for example. Do you think Jacobs and McKinney really recruit top talent?
Those strike me as two different questions. Are they going to get a veteran wide receiver? Absolutely. There is no chance they're not adding a free agent.
Totally.
Now, is it going to be one of those elite guys? I'd say the chances are actually against it.
Really?
I know that's not really what fans want to hear, but the opportunities like DK Metcalf, we don't even know if he's available. I don't think he actually is. Davante Adams, I mean, he might come to the Packers, but there could be a team that pays more. Like we saw with Calvin Ridley last year. There can be one team that just dramatically overpays to get their guy because they're desperate. And the Packers will not do that because the Packers as an organization, we've seen it so many times, they're not desperate. And usually the top free agents, like the very elite guys, go to teams that are desperate at those important positions, right? You can go back and look at the past few years. The best guys always go to the desperate teams. I think they're going to add a more mid-level guy. I've got some ideas about who that might be, but we can save that for a free agency preview. They'll do sooner rather than later, maybe.
Interesting.
But yeah, I don't think it's going to be an elite guy, but I do think they're going to add somebody substantial to the rim.
I think they're going to add one of the elite guys. I really do. I'm not sure.
Every year there's off-season hype around some elite guys, and they almost never move. I don't think DK Metcalf is any different.
No, not DK. So I don't think DK will go, but I think there's a good shot Davante goes back. Tee Higgins, he said he'd take less money to go back to the Bengals. I thought I heard. I believe he'll.
Players will say all sorts of stuff, and their agents will say all sorts of stuff.
He's important to that team going on a Super Bowl run. He's not as important as Jamar Burrow. Like he's very, very distant from those two. But you need it. Like you need a number two in today's NFL. And with Burrow, you could survive it a little better than most. But I have a feeling he's gonna stay in Cincinnati. That's kind of where I'm leaning towards. But
yeah, well, I just think it's not so exciting, right? Everyone wants to talk about Tee Higgins and the rest, but I think a guy like DeAndre Hopkins or Stephon Diggs, Marquise Brown, Keenan Allen, I think those are more likely additions for the Packers.
Yeah, Diggs would be an interesting one, especially coming off the injury. How much does he have left? If you get him back to 100%, Stephon Diggs is awesome. But that's why I think T's the guy there that you want still. Okay, Tommy Cassius at Thomas Cassius, our good friend from Notre Dame. Can Chris Hess fix Anthony Richardson like he did Josh Allen? Some Indianapolis Colts questions. It's about damn time we got that in this mailbag here. So, can you teach accuracy, Ziggy? Can you make someone
I'm not
more?
Sure how many of our fans know who Chris Hess is?
Oh,
so
yeah.
Chris Hess. Do you know who Chris Hess is, Paul?
No, I do. I have an entire spiel here, but if you would like to
go ahead. Give your spiel.
So, Chris Hess, he's a biometrics expert. Now, listen to this. Okay,
former Kansas State long snapper.
Yes, I've heard the name Chris Hess before because of this Josh Allen thing, but I'm going to read you what I researched on Chris Hess today. I don't want you to make you think that like I don't know this guy's life story, but former long snapper at Kansas State. He founded a company called Biometric, which is a 3D motion analysis of for a company that used technology to track movement of athletes and improve their game. This is how they describe Biometric. So what he does, and it's actually really interesting, his quarterbacks go through 3 different exercises. The first one, markerless 3D motion capture system. It captures how the quarterback's arm, body, and joints work together. They do every throw in the route tree. They do squats, they jump, they lunge. The second exercise measures what the quarterback does from the ground up. You stand on dual force plates to measure the ground forces at work when throwing the football. The third exercise tracks passing velocity. After they're complete, he analyzes all of them, and he gets a full picture of the QB's throwing motion from the ground up, identifying areas that can be improved upon to increase velocity and accuracy. Pretty interesting. Like, it's really interesting that, like, how does someone even get into and develop the technology for this stuff? This is way beyond me. Well, he didn't develop
the technology. Dari Motion developed the technology.
Yeah, no. But I mean, even getting into that field and having the right people to do it, and like, it's just very impressive to go through it all. But Josh Allen did this in the spring of 2020. Okay, and he went from 3,100 passing yards to 4,500, 20 touchdowns to 37, and his completion percentage jumped from 52% his rookie year to 69% in that year 3. That 17% jump is the biggest jump in the history of football between 2 years for completion percentage. Now, there's a lot of things that went into this. Stephon Diggs pretty good. That was an addition that the Bills made. Also, I think just being in the league a few seasons. But it's no doubt, it seems like this really helped. And you hear Josh Allen talk about it. He said, Chris Hess, as far as my mechanics go, is one of the most influential people in my career, because Josh was throwing the ball and his body was just tilted forward too much, he was saying. So he's relying on his arm for all the power, not using his hip to rotate into it. So he completely changed how he threw the football. And that seems to have made a ton of difference. It actually helped him. He was having shoulder pain too for 2 seasons, and that reduced because he was able to take the pressure off of his arm. It's really interesting to me. And Anthony Richardson is doing this. And you have to remember, Anthony Richardson, only 13 starts in college and 15 in the NFL. He really hasn't played that much quarterback. So do you think is this something that is on your radar, Ziggy, or are you saying this is the last-ditch effort in what will probably wind up being a failed NFL career?
Here's the thing. I think there's one major discontinuity between Josh Allen and Anthony Richardson you didn't mention. Josh Allen, while there was a huge gap going into year 3, he looked a lot better in year 2 than he did year 1.
Yes.
His completion percentage went up almost 7%. He went from 10 touchdowns and 12 interceptions to 20 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. 2,000 yards to 3,000.
They made the playoffs.
Yeah, and as he said, in 2020, they exploded, right? He played substantially better, and I think this played a role. But Josh Allen, everybody knew he was a hard worker. Everybody knew that he wanted to succeed. He had all the tools, obviously, but he was in that building. He was doing his best, and we'd seen signs that he could be good. It was that next step that was unprecedented. Anthony Richardson, you never know how these things are going to turn out. And I think the biometrics is a nice thing, but I think that's only part of it. If this company could genuinely turn any good athlete into an all-star NFL quarterback, they'd charge $50 million, $100 million a session, because that's what that would be worth.
Well,
that's true, right?
Also,
if you could do that reliably, if you could take like Anthony Richardson and guarantee he's going to be a great quarterback, NFL teams would pay 8 or 9 figures for that. So I think it'll help. It can't hurt. Anthony Richardson can't be any worse. But the thing that worried me about Richardson was that it seemed like everything got worse in year 2. Year 1, the first few games were promising. Year 2, he had so many disastrous games. The leadership, it felt like, got worse. The work ethic complaints felt like they got worse. And I worry that Anthony Richardson has been discouraged. He's lost his confidence and he's not getting a whole lot better. Chances are Anthony Richardson's not going to work out. So I think the Colts are doing the right thing. They're trying what they can. And this isn't like, they're not having him do ayahuasca, right? This is a thing that makes sense to have your quarterback do. But I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah, that's where I lean as well, in that we could talk about Chris Hess having the success with Josh Allen, but how many other quarterbacks has he helped out where it just didn't translate to the field? Probably a good number. I mean, they didn't even list anyone else in the article that I was reading. I do believe that to a degree, there are guys who are just accurate passers and not accurate passers. I was listening to Troy Aikman saying that he always believed that until he saw Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen might be more of the unicorn than an actual like standard for people.
There's only been one guy who's ever done what Josh Allen has done.
Yeah, so I would say I'm hesitant to believe that Richardson can turn it around. With that said, he has had, as I mentioned before, 28 starts between the NFL and college. Like that's not a lot. So if there's someone who could be molded into the next Josh Allen, Anthony Richardson checks all the boxes of the athlete, the arm power, and maybe it is just something that needs to be tweaked. Like, I wouldn't rule it out. I would just say, if you're a Colts fan and you see Anthony Richardson goes to biometric expert who fixed Josh Allen, I wouldn't have in the back of my mind this expectation of, oh, he's going to come out and be a stud this year. He's going to throw for 30 touchdowns. Before people complain
in the comments, I think you and I both said biometric. We know it's biomechanics.
Biomechanics, I'm sorry.
But it's easy. Look, I'm a philosopher. Paul's a producer. We don't talk about that stuff. Anthony Richardson, if they do know biometrics, if Anthony Richardson comes back 7'4", 380, running a 4.1, like, NFL would better watch out if they can like do the genetic engineering required. But
hey, dude, if you're building a quarterback in a lab, it's pretty close to what Anthony Richardson looks like. So I hope it works out. He seems like a great dude. The Colts for 2 years now have been right on the verge of being in the playoffs, while also not having a very good team, like a good season. If you looked at the Colts the last 2 years and said, is that a good team? I think you'd be like, they're like, probably not. They're probably a 5 or 6 win team, but no, they've been on the verge of the playoffs. So if you even have a little jump in Anthony Richardson, like, this is a team that could compete at least for a wild card spot. So I hope it works out. I'd probably bet against it, but it's worth monitoring.
I will say, if you're a Colts fan looking for hope, here's what you can say. Josh Allen, I know he started more games than Anthony Richardson, but Josh Allen got mediocre to bad coaching, right? He went to JUCO, then he went to Wyoming. His quarterback coach at Wyoming hadn't ever coached at the FBS level before. Anthony Richardson, like, you can say, well, he had high-level SEC coaching and his offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, coached NFL guys. But like, Anthony Richardson didn't get to take advantage of tons of that. I think that's your hope, is you hope that there's some similarity there and not getting a lot of coaching. But now that Anthony Richardson's had 5 years of high-level coaches, I'm not so sure.
Maximilian says, what are your thoughts on the increasing number of international games? Pros and cons from adding a European division to the league. As a German, I quite like the idea, even though I'm aware it would take at least a decade to establish. I'm cool with the international games. I think it's good for the league to branch out, and they're kind of fun. If I were a player, I wouldn't like it. Going down to Brazil and having all the shenanigans of the busing back and forth in the field, I don't like that. Like, the fields need to be in tip-top shape. You can't have the field conditions that you had in Brazil. But if you're able to have an environment where it's safe, like as safe as being in the United States for the players.
And Germany hasn't had those kinds of problems.
No, Germany hasn't. I'm cool with it. I wouldn't go too crazy, because I do think that's a long trip, and you're messing with sleep schedules and stuff. And who knows? Like, if players are okay with it, I do whatever you want. I'm just guessing that they don't like it. As far as a European division, yeah, it would be cool to have a European division, but I think it would be a nightmare. I think it would be a disaster. Does that, like, just having to have teams go and stay for multiple weeks, and I don't know. I think it's easier just have it be in the country.
Well, here's the pros of adding NFL Europe. It will make more money for NFL owners, especially if, like they've talked about, it will add. They'll add more teams. They'll make a division. That's it. That's all we need to know. NFL Europe is coming, whether we like it or not. The fact that they keep saying they've said consistently every offseason, we're not there yet, but we want to add that division. It's going to come. I think it will make the game quality worse. I think the players will be unhappy. Players complain sometimes if they're like from California and they're drafted by the Jets, right? They're like, I kind of want to be near home. This sort of sucks. So they're drafted by the Jaguars. If you're from California and you're drafted by the like Berlin Bombers, you're going to be really unhappy.
The London Crumpets.
Yeah, like you're not going to be happy about that. Free agents, I don't know how those teams would attract free agents. Legally, it would be a mess, but it will make owners more money. So it's going to come, and I think we're all going to be worse off for it.
Yeah, look, Max, I get that. I don't know if you live in Germany. You said as a German, I like the idea, but if you live in Germany,
I think Max Neumeyer is in Germany.
If you live in Germany, I would be pumped if I were living abroad and an NFL team came. Yeah, I'd be jacked up.
Yeah,
too.
You don't want to watch. What was it? Panthers Giants.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I totally get where you're coming from. I just think for the players, as Ziggy mentioned, it would be tough. From Jaha, what happened to the power rankings at the end of the season? My favorite segment. Frankly, towards the end of the year, I think we just had some travel schedules that got in the way of power rankings, and we wound up.
And then the playoffs, it just doesn't make as much sense to run.
Yeah, and then the playoffs, we let it go. So that'll be back next year. I mean, it was a lot of fun, and we'll probably find more things to power rank. If you have any ideas, drop them in for the offseason. Nathan Smith, we've had it for a season. Does the new kickoff need to revert to the old rule, remain the same, or get updated in some way for next season?
I'm the special teams guy. Let me take it.
Yeah, please.
While we weren't huge fans of it, I don't think the NFL's position, and they've said this explicitly, is that the new kickoff rule was a huge success. Why do they think it was a huge success? There were more returns and fewer injuries, which is what they wanted. Right now, the way this rule is done, if 9 teams vote against it remaining, it'll change. Otherwise, the rule is going to stay the same. There might be slight tweaks, but while it made the game less exciting, I think the NFL's position was, look, the college kickoff thing, we just can't do it. Teams won't return because there's too many injuries. It's too risky. And we want to have some return in the game. This year, I think, by their perspective, accomplished it.
Yeah, I just don't care. Like it's, kick it off. I think the kickoff's important, and I would love to have the kickoff always be a part of football, even if it was just ceremonial. And it's such an iconic moment of the sport. I would just leave it the same. We don't need to bounce back and forth. It's fine. It looks stupid. I think everyone agrees it looks dumb. And then half the times you don't get returns. Wait, do you have more returns? Did you say?
Yeah, there are more returns with fewer injuries.
Sure. Like, to me, just blast it out of the end zone and get the ball in the 25 or 30, and go from there. I think it's fine. I didn't hate it as much when I first saw it. I thought it was the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. And then as the year went on, it's like, okay, this is fine. So if it leads to less injuries, perfect. Jonah Douglas, do you think Aaron Glenn was a good hire for the Jets? Ben Johnson for the Bears? Well, Ben Johnson, I think, was a great hire for Chicago. It's taken a swing at the number one most coveted coordinator over the past 2-3 years. So if it works out, there's a very high ceiling in Chicago because the talent that Caleb Williams has, the talent on that roster, combined with Ben Johnson's creative offensive mind, the Bears could be really good really quickly. On the same note here, they are the Bears, so you never really know what's going to happen. And Ben Johnson has no coaching experience at the head coach level before, so there's always that little risk. But this was something you had to do if you were Chicago. If he was willing to come, you had to take this swing. Would you agree with that as far as Ben Johnson goes? Yeah,
no, Johnson, there's no question. I don't know if the hire is going to work out, but what else were they supposed to do?
Aaron Glenn, I think there's more question marks around. I prefer an offensive guy in this league, but Aaron Glenn's a former Jet. He's someone who wants to be with the Jets, and you can't say that for every single coaching candidate. He's pumped up to be in that room. I think that he has a really strong ability to lead men and to be the alpha male in that locker room. So I like it. I'm going to need to see it on the field before I believe the schematics behind everything. But as far as the Jets go, they need organization. They need someone to come in and just really whip that team into shape. And everything you see from Aaron Glenn seems like he can be that kind of guy. So I actually like this hire as well.
Yeah, my position on the show, you can go back and watch it, was I think it's a fine hire and it doesn't matter because the Jets are just that kind of organization. I think it is what it is.
Hey, well,
it feels like they're doing the same thing they did last time. But what else are you supposed to do?
It's unfair of us to come in and just say the Jets are the Jets, the Bears are the Bears, because teams can turn it around.
I don't think the Bears are the Bears. I really feel like things are changing in that organization. I think they've got a real chance. The Jets, I don't see a lot of hope in the near future.
Well, yeah, Jets fans are going to say as long as Woody Johnson's the owner, we're screwed.
Well, and it's like you don't have a quarterback. The defense was never the problem for this team. Like I get why you're hiring him. You want to get a guy from a winning organization. I just don't think it'll make a difference.
It probably won't. But as far as who else they could have gotten, I like Aaron Glenn. I think it's a good move. Sherlock Mahomes says, how long till every NFL coach is from the Dan Campbell coaching tree? So, well, at least with the Jets and the Bears, that's a good start. We'll see.
That'll never happen because Dan Campbell will be a head coach in the NFL for the next 100 years.
John Exler says, it looks like the league has shifted into a mobile quarterback league. Should the Packers be training Love to take off more? Or should they trade him for high value and invest in Malik? I'm not upset with Love. I just really believe that in the next couple of years, if you're a good part of your QB's game is not mobility, there's zero chance of winning a Super Bowl. Plus, just look how well Matt LaFleur worked with Malik compared to his disaster QB plays for Love. John, what is going on here with this comment? This is all over the map. I would absolutely not trade Jordan Love for Malik Willis. At the end of the day, I don't know how clear I need to be on this, on my stance. Quarterbacks need to be able to throw the football. That is the most important attribute for a quarterback to have. When Anthony Richardson came out, Ziggy, did I not sit in this chair for 3 months and say, I love everything about him, but can he throw the football? If you can't throw, I'm not interested. Now, Malik Willis, when he came in, had a couple excellent throws. He did have a few big time throws that helped them win games, but he only threw the ball a handful of times because he's not a great passer. So I love his mobility. It's great. When he came in certain situations, he provided a boost in what he could do with his legs. And sometimes the Packers were unstoppable on the ground. But to win a Super Bowl, you need someone who can throw the ball. Like, especially in today's NFL. I think more in today's NFL than 10 years ago. Malik Willis was better suited for like Brady and the 2000s when it was a little more of a tough game. Now it's air it out. So absolutely not. I would not get rid of Love for Malik, but I would, if Jordan Love is healthy, this year he wasn't healthy, I would let mobility be a part of his game. Yeah. Like the Chiefs do it with Mahomes. They unleash Mahomes in the playoffs because you're trying to protect your quarterback.
Yeah, I think you didn't get to see a lot of Jordan Love's this year, in mobility this year, because he was injured a lot. Now, he's not Jaden Daniels. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not even really Josh Allen. But he's not Joe Burrow or Jared Goff either. He can move very well in the pocket. He's mobile in that respect, and he can get out and run. I actually think mobility-wise, he reminds me a lot of a guy like Baker Mayfield. You said Patrick Mahomes. I don't want to say Mahomes just because when you say Mahomes, everyone freaks out. Baker Mayfield is a guy who, he's much better passing the ball than at running, but he's very good at navigating a pocket, and when you need him to run, he can run. I think that's what you're hoping Jordan Love can be. He's not a statue, right? We're not talking about Peyton Manning here. He's a guy who can move. So no, I don't even want to engage with Packers fans. I love you, John Exel. You support us for a long time. We appreciate you. I can't do that. We should have Malik Willis as our quarterback. That is like, imagine Vikings fans last year saying we should have Josh Dobbs as our long-term quarterback because we looked good of him for a couple of games if Dobbs hadn't played bad. Like that's what this strikes me as. Malik Willis is not your guy. He is not your quarterback. He will never be the guy. He will never be your quarterback. Let it go.
And also for John, who I'm not mad either, John. I got worked up during the rant. John also did not say he would trade Jordan Love for Malik Willis.
No, he raised that as an option.
Yeah, I may have made it sound like that was John's way of thinking. That John never said that. John just threw it out there in the open, but. I've seen
There's
other
implicature there. There's implicature when you say I'm not upset with Love. I just think we can't win without a mobile quarterback, and Malik Willis is a mobile quarterback.
I mean, I saw a lot of Packer fans during the season saying that. I was like, he's hurt. Love is hurt. You know, in the Lions game,
he has a groin injury.
People were freaking out during the Lions game. I'm like, he can't move. He couldn't walk off the field at halftime.
Matt LaFleur said he can't move.
And what I meant with Mahomes is that because Mahomes is one of the best scramblers, best pocket presence in the history of the sport. What I meant with Mahomes is that you don't really see him taking off the way he does in the playoffs and lowering his head into lowering his shoulder into people. That's that's for the playoffs. I wouldn't do that with Jordan Love. Like I'd take a similar approach. Jordan Love is mobile. I think he's actually kind of like Darnold. Darnold's sneaky mobile and athletic as well, where you can pick up some yards when you have to, but you're always slide. And then if you're in a big playoff game, then yeah, maybe you utilize the mobility a little bit more. But I think Jordan Love is fine as far as mobility goes. I think he's more mobile than a lot of people. Ryu Hitsuya, how do you feel about people who root for division rivals after their team loses? I saw a shocking number of Green Bay fans that wanted the Lombardi to stay in the division or for the Lions to go all the way, like everyone doesn't treat us like a blood feud dating back 50 generations. Would you like to go first here?
I mean, I'll keep it simple. I think they're wrong. I think they're foolish. I think they don't understand what football's about.
Yeah.
How do I feel? Can you imagine a Michigan fan sitting back saying, boy, I hope Ohio State wins this year because they're in the Big Ten? And I want a Big Ten over an SEC champion?
How do I feel about it? I think it's lunacy and insanity. If there's any but here's the thing: if there's anyone in the North, like I'll stick to the North. That's our division. If there's anyone in the North that could do that, it would be the Packers because they run the division. Or they're like if you were to elect a head of the division, it would be the Packers. Like
they're not the head of the division; they're the dictator of the division. Yeah, they're Stalin, right? They've got the iron fist.
Yeah, so I would never. I mean, I wanted the Lions to lose. I acknowledged that was almost cruel in a way to like the suffering Lions fans for years. But like, you're our rival. Like we're rivals to a degree. The Vikings and Lions are rivals. The Vikings and I don't want the Bears to win the Super Bowl. The Packers win a game, it helps the channel a little bit. Yeah, maybe I'll give a little smirk and get some views for us. But then after that, I'm like, they can't win. If they win, it becomes a problem. I rooted for them over the Eagles because I do not like the Eagles. I don't like the Eagles. I don't like the Saints. I'll make exceptions there. But basically anyone else, I'm like, I enjoy. I like when the division's respectful though. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not personal. I'm not going to like freak out if the Lions or Packers win. I don't want them to. I'm not rooting for it.
And hey, if someone comes and says like, hey, we had the best division in football or like the best history, I'll stand next to a Packer and Bear and Lion fan and be like, hell no, you don't. Like it's us. Like I'm not against that sort of odd camaraderie. But as far as like rooting for them, no, I'm not going to root for them. But you know what? To each his own. So if you want to root for the Lions and you're a Packer fan, go for it. Newton. What's Ziggy doing in Virginia?
Working.
Easy. Bayshore Park. Why do the Vikings wear purple? I actually have no idea. Did you?
So the Vikings lie about this on their team website. I'm 100% serious. The Vikings have covered up the true story. The Vikings on their website say they want to make a bold statement. They need an identity, so they picked it. That's not quite right. And I think they don't want to admit it because the story is they stole it from someone. Burt Rose, the Vikings' first general manager. He was our public relations director for the Rams before he came over. He was an alumnus of the University of Washington. And the University of Washington, everybody knows, they've got like those distinctive purple jerseys. He just copied those jerseys. We've got the sketches. His daughter dug them up. He like modeled them explicitly on the University of Washington. Obviously, there's some additions, right? You've got the horns, you've got the branding, but that's why they're purple. Because the University of Washington was purple, and that's where he went to school, and he liked them there. The Vikings won't admit it, but we've got archival evidence that that's true.
Maybe we should have gone after Penix harder. That might have been the move. That's interesting. Cameron says, who's most likely to run the NFC North for the next 5 to 10 years and why? If the Packers address defensive needs and trade for a young surefire wide receiver 1 this offseason, I really like their chances. Next 5 to 10 years. 5 to 10 is interesting because the Lions are set up.
I think there's two different answers.
Okay, go ahead. You can hit this first.
I think 5, it's the Lions. The Lions are a machine. It's that simple. I think they're a great team with tons of young talent. I think they're going to go on to be good for the next 5 years. I don't think any team's going to run this division for 5 years.
It's a really
going to be when the Lions are going to be the best in the division the next 5 years, I think. Jared Goff is 30, though. After 5 years, he'll be 35. I don't think Matthew Stafford is 36 right now. Like, it's tough to play quarterback long after 30 years old. You can get a few good years out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Jared Goff's going to be making it a whole lot longer than 35. 10 years, I think. Dan Campbell's 48. If you were saying Goff plays 10 years, he'd be 40. Think how far removed Dan Campbell is from the NFL. So I think it's going to be the Packers if we're looking at the next 10, the Lions for the next 5.
Yeah, I'm totally with you.
Any one team is going to run the division. I'd be surprised if over the next 5 years, any one team wins the division more than twice.
Over the next how many years? 5?
5 years.
Yeah, I think the Lions you have to say for the next 5 years, and that's why we talked about the Lions in the NFC North show that we just did. But there's just so much talent there, and there's so much young talent that I think they're in a great spot to be. Like, their Super Bowl window is open for a while here, assuming that Jared Goff stays similar to the level he's at right now. So I would say the Lions for 5 years as well. If I went to 10 years, I would come off of Detroit because the quarterback is just that important. If the Vikings, if JJ McCarthy works out, I might say the Vikings because I think that I think O'Connell is the best coach in the division. I think, yeah, I like him more than Campbell. The Bears are interesting because if Kayla, now it's all this like what works out with quarterback. I think if I had the gun to my head right now, I'd say the Packers, given their organizational excellence and the sustained excellence that they've had for so long, they're always going to be in the fold. I'm with you that I don't think they'll dominate it, but if I said, hey, who's going to win the division the most over the next 10 years, I'd probably bet on the Packers, unless if the Lions go on a sweep here for 4 or 5 years. It's just the Bears and the Vikings are so many. You never know. Like, they don't have the quarterback cemented. I think Caleb will be really good. And I think McCarthy could be good, and I trust the Viking systems in place. But the Packers have the most sure thing to me in love of the quarterbacks amongst those 3 teams. So I would say Packers as well. JD 303 QWP, a bunch of numbers. Rank the NFC North GMs. I got it here, Ziggy. What do you think? I go
first, Paul.
I go Brad Holmes 1. I think he has to be 1. He's done a tremendous job in Detroit, bringing in Jared Goff, hiring Dan Campbell. He's drafted. Listen to these guys he's drafted: Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra, Aiden Hutchinson, Aleem McNeil, Sam LaPorta, Brian Branch, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jamison Williams. I mean, this is just some of them. Like, he's drafted even more than that. He's been fundamental to their turnaround, more so than Dan Campbell, I would even say. I think Brad Holmes has been the guy. And that Dan Campbell's the face of the turnaround. 2, I'd probably put Brian Gutekunst.
Probably.
I'd put Brian Gutekunst at 2. Since 2018, he's had some really good drafts. The move drafting Jordan Love took a lot of guts, and it seems like it's going to work out. I know Love didn't take the step forward that we thought he would this year, but that gets a lot of points for me. And Brian Gutekunst. And he just generally does a very good job. He's had some really strong drafts. Drafted Jair as well. All the weapons that they have on the team. Literally all the receivers and tight ends. He drafted them. Zach Tom was a great pick in the 3rd or 4th round. Making the moves for Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney. Brian Gutekunst is a great GM. I think the division actually has really strong GMs as a whole. It's probably why you see them all competing for playoff spots. And then it comes down to Kwesi or Ryan Poles at 3.
It's not. Ryan Poles is clearly number 4.
Well, I would put Kwesi at 3 as well. I would agree with you. And
I'll tell you why I'm putting Ryan Poles at 4. Kwesi, I think, has been all right. I don't have a lot good or bad to say about him. What did we say on our show last time? We said the Bears for the past 2 or 3 seasons in a row have had all of the same needs at the top, excluding quarterback. And the quarterback was the easiest thing in the world. You can't give him a lot of credit for having the number 1 overall pick and taking Caleb.
Well, wait.
They haven't addressed any of their big concerns.
Wait. I still put Kwesi at 3. But Ryan Poles did have an incredibly shrewd move when he traded the number 1 overall pick to the Panthers and got in return DJ Moore, the pick that turned into Caleb Williams, and he also got Darnell Wright.
That was a good trade. But the fact they became a number 1 overall pick, that's luck.
Yeah, that's luck. But here's what's going on. Like, if you're looking at Poles and Kwesi, we're about to find out all Poles' decisions basically these next 2 years, maybe, with Caleb and Ben Johnson now. But the Bears have sucked. I mean, they haven't made the playoffs. So you have to put him at 4. You could say you like the direction the Bears are in right now, but there's been no success. Kwesi's won 13 or more games in 2 of his 3 years. Like that roster, there was a picture of the Vikings roster and Kwesi took over. It's gutted. They had to.
Yeah, people assume because the Vikings were good when he took over that he's been riding that success. That's not what it's been at all. And he's made tough choices like letting Danielle Hunter walk.
Letting Kirk go.
Yeah, that people don't. It's easy to look back and say, oh, you let Kirk go. He's coming off an injury. The Falcons gave him a huge deal. Plenty of teams were in the Kirk Cousins market.
I thought Kwesi's last offseason, the 2024 offseason, was phenomenal. I mean, look how many great pieces he added at great value, locked up Jefferson. The Darnold move was great. Yeah, we'll see what McCarthy is. I mean, this is going to be one of the calling cards of his career, is J.J. McCarthy, the early portion of his career at least. But I think he's, outside of the first draft, which has been a disaster, generally done a pretty good job. I did see a graphic, though, I think that the Vikings over the past handful of seasons have the least kept drafted players. And that is something that Kwesi needs. Like, Kwesi's not a great drafter. And that's a little concerning. I think he's a great businessman, and I like the Hawkinson deal was awesome. But I've never been particularly impressed with his drafting abilities so far.
I think drafting is largely a matter of luck.
No, and it is to a degree, but I won't get into the Hamilton situation again because I get it.
I will say this though. I'll say one last thing on this, and then we can move on. Is I know you put Gutekunst at 2, and I probably agree. Gutekunst has done something I've never really seen before, which is manage the departure of a volatile Hall of Fame level quarterback, know exactly when to pull the trigger and move on from him when it still looks like he's great, get a big draft pick in return, and then continue being successful.
Yeah, that was phenomenal.
Obviously, like, Holmes has done a great job drafting and the rest, but I think it can be hard to tell where luck comes into drafting, where other guys come into drafting. Managing the Aaron Rodgers situation was incredibly hard to do, and they did it masterfully.
Yep,
Not just drafting Jordan Love. Obviously, that's part of it, but knowing when to let him go and continuing to be competitive. You never really see that. Look what's happened to the Saints since Drew Brees left. They had no clue what they were doing or how to handle that.
No, you're totally right. But Pounder 420, he says, is Mike Evans the most underrated receiver of all time?
Nope.
He's up there. I mean, I think
he's up there, but there's a clear answer for number 1.
Who?
Torrey Holt. Do you know that Torrey Holt is not in the Hall of Fame?
Are you serious?
Despite retiring with the 10th most receiving yards. He had 1,300 yards 6 seasons in a row. Torrey Holt is not in the Hall of Fame. He's a finalist this year, but Isaac Bruce got in before him. In 2000, he leads the NFL in receiving yards, doesn't make an all-pro team. He led the NFL in receiving yards twice, only made an all-pro team in one of those years. Like, Torrey Holt, maybe the most important receiver. I know Isaac Bruce is a great player. On the most influential offense maybe in the history of football, the greatest show on turf. Didn't make the Hall of Fame.
How is he? That's shot. I feel like I'm pretty well versed on my football history. How is he not in? That's just someone you assume. That's a great poll.
Yeah,
Ziggy.
no, Isaac Bruce.
That's
and
a great
Torrey Holt's
poll.
been trying to get in for years, and he's not in the Hall of Fame.
I had a few names for most underrated.
Anquan Bolden, I think, is up there too.
Oh, I loved. I always thought Anquan Bolden, not by me, not underrated by me, but I thought I had Jimmy Smith as a name, where I don't think a lot of people.
Jimmy Smith, if he could have played a full career.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't start playing until he was 27, really. Or like that's when he had his first real breakout year. He missed 3 years. Well, Jimmy Smith's story, though, is unbelievable. Like, he drafted by Dallas, does nothing rookie year. Injured in 1993. 1994, he doesn't even make the Eagles team. Goes to the Jaguars, starts 4 games, does nothing. Then the next few seasons, 1,250 yards, 1,300, 1,200, 1,600, 1,200, 1,400, 1,000, 800, 1,200, 1,000 until he's 36 years old. I mean, that's nuts. And a lot of people, unless you're playing NFL Street, probably don't know who he is. Wes Welker,
it's
underrated.
I don't think I've ever seen such a thing. I know you mentioned the injuries, but like, he got opportunities before then. Like you said, he got 7 games of Dallas where he wasn't injured. He got a full season of the Jaguars and did nothing. And then who did they cut for him? I think they thought he was good, so they cut Andre Rison, who like was a decent player, a first team All Pro, like in the early 90s. He was a good player. But like I've never seen a player. I can't think of another time. Davante Adams is maybe the closest that comes to mind, where you just like you get plenty of opportunities and aren't very good, and then suddenly 1 year later you're just like one of the best in the NFL and have that stretch for a long, long time.
Yeah, I'm trying to think anyone else.
Davante Adams was a rookie thing. That's the thing. Jimmy Smith in his third year.
No. This was fifth year in the league breaking out. I always thought Steve Largent was really underrated too. Seahawks receiver, Hall of Famer.
No doubt.
A lot of people said Marcus Colston
not being in the Hall of Fame. I don't think a lot of people know that. They just, as you said, you just assume he's in.
Mike Evans, though, over time will become even more underrated. Right now, he's underrated in the league, but as time goes on, he's not going to be remembered the same way that people are going to talk about Justin Jefferson or Calvin Johnson. And I don't think he's as good as those guys. Like, that's also a fair thing to say. Mike Evans, in the history of football, though, will probably be underrated because what he's doing is unbelievable. I just don't think that like Torrey Holt is closer, I would say, to the elite receivers of all time than Mike Evans is. But
Torrey Holt is an all-time great, but Mike Evans also.
Mike Evans also is great.
Doing those stats with some of his major quarterbacks. I'm talking guys who have thrown almost a full season of passes to him. Mike Glennon, Josh McCown. Jameis is like a good player.
He's all-time
he gets
great.
You the stats, but then you get Ryan Fitzpatrick, Blaine Gabbert. Like those are guys, all of whom have thrown about 10 or more games to Mike Evans to be as consistent as he has. I mean, Mike Evans, his greatest career achievement was making Johnny Manziel look like he was going to be the next great thing. The guy elevates whoever's around him. And that includes, he elevated Tom Brady. You know how hard it is as a wide receiver to elevate Tom Brady? And he did.
No, but what I mean here too, when I'm looking at Mike Evans, is if you go through his career, it's a lot of 1,000 to 1,200 yard seasons, which are great. I mean, they're phenomenal seasons. But you only see one 1,500 plus, and that's what I mean when I say as time goes on, he'll get even more underrated because people won't appreciate how consistently unbelievable he was. And when you don't have those Antonio Brown, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase type of crazy seasons where you have 1,800 yards, it's a little easier to fade into history, I think. But yeah,
I think people also forget how hard it is to get a touchdown. In a bunch of those seasons, he's had double-digit touchdowns.
He's
most
unbelievable.
Of them he has, and he's had like 8.
Yeah,
he's a monster.
Shin in Eagle or Shanine Eagle says, "What surprised you the most about this season, and what didn't surprise you?"
I'll take this.
Yeah. Well, let's do it. Let's do it together. What did not surprise you?
The Jets meltdown. I was saying all offseason, it's the New York Jets with an old quarterback.
That's really funny.
What do you think is going to happen? And Paul, you were up here telling me I was wrong. Jack was up here.
That's my number one on what surprised me.
Yeah, I don't know how it surprises you that the New York Jets with Aaron Rodgers had a cultural implosion. I wasn't expecting the head coach to get fired 5 games in, but I said they wouldn't make the playoffs and would be competing with the Patriots for 4th in the division. Sure enough, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I had the Chiefs being in the Super Bowl. I'm not surprising me at all. And Detroit dominating the regular season. I thought Detroit was primed to have a phenomenal year and crash out potentially in the playoffs because of the curse. So that did not surprise me. What did surprise you, Ziggy? And real quick, I'll just say my number one, or one of the things I had, was how bad the Jets and Jaguars were. So go ahead. What else surprised you?
The thing that surprised me was the Vikings. I mean, there's no way that's not number one for me. I predicted them winning, I think, 3 or 4 games in our preseason show. Instead, they lost 4 games. This Vikings team was incredible. And I think
amazing.
Some people expect them of a decent season. You expect them of a decent season, except Jack, who sat up there and said with a completely straight face, I went through the schedule. The Minnesota Vikings are going to win 13 games. Nobody predicted the Vikings were going to have a great season, and they did.
Yeah, that I had that in there. I had the Commanders and Broncos success, particularly Denver. I did not think Denver would make a playoff game.
Not particularly the Commanders making it to the championship game.
Well, no, I'm sorry. Commanders in the championship game, 100. But if you said before the season started, do you expect the Commanders or Broncos to go to the playoffs? Who's more likely? I would have said Washington. Yeah, going to the championship game was shocking. Both those teams, I thought, phenomenal years. Bengals missing the playoffs, that really shocked me.
Not because of injury, really.
Not because of injury. I mean, the defense was. If you told me that Joe Burrow had an MVP if you read Joe Burrow's numbers, I would have said, what are they? The
13
one seed?
wins? 14
are they the one? And then the last thing I had was I was a little surprised that neither Jordan Love or CJ Stroud elevated into this superstar tier, or really even or maybe even regressed a little bit. At times. So I thought one of those two guys might cement themselves as belonging in the conversation with the elite quarterbacks. And I don't think either of them did that this season. And it could happen next year. Yeah, just year 3 of them starting.
It takes time.
It's hard. Okay, a few more questions here from JJB. He has 2. Which NFC North team do you trust the most to win a playoff game next year?
Easy answer, I think. The Lions.
I would say the Lions too. I think
I know the coordinator's left, but if you can give me the most talented team with the least roster turnover, I don't care if they lost their coordinators. It has to be the Lions.
It has to be Detroit. Alternate question. During Ben Johnson's Bears head coaching press conference, he went on to say how much he respects Dan Campbell and KOC, but then went on to say how nice it is beating Matt LaFleur twice a season. What do you believe is the most likely reason for this dichotomy of his approach?
I mean, I think everybody hates the Packers.
He's a Bears coach.
That simple. And you can see of the Lions Packers, Lions players are wearing F the Packers shirts. Players are wearing F the Lions shirts. They really didn't get along. The Vikings, Packers fans hate the Vikings, but Lions and Bears fans, I think we don't hate each other quite the same way because we're usually at the bottom getting beat up by the Packers. We're sort of fellow in misery. I don't think that's too much of a personal slight. I mean, there's some of that. I think it's just everybody in the division wants to beat the Packers, and that rubs off on Matt LaFleur.
Did he say beating LaFleur twice a season?
Yeah.
I need to watch the clip. I did not know he said... He didn't say the Packers. He said beating LaFleur.
Well, he said my favorite part of being a coach with the Lions was beating LaFleur twice a season.
Oh, man. I mean, if you're a Bears fan...
The reason he gave was that there's a rivalry of every team with the Packers. That's just how it is. And that it was friendly, it wasn't disrespect. But that's just how the division's set up. Look, he said it. It's true.
If you're a Bears fan, too, you probably love to hear it. The Bears are the biggest rival. Whether or not I like it, the Bears and the Packers are the biggest rivalry in the division. So having the Bears coach say it doesn't surprise me. He's probably saying it to jack up fans too. But I would just be a little careful when going after the Packers. They're not the kings of the division right now, but for the past 20 years they have been, and Chicago's done nothing. So you don't want to fuel the fire. You don't. I don't mind him saying it, but I'm just next year when the Bears and Packers play, that clip is going to be played. And I'm sure that the Packers are aware that he said that. So, J.K. Zarata, which of the NFC North teams has the greatest potential to improve next year? Which team do you feel will take the biggest step backwards? To improve, it's just the Bears.
It's when you talk about improving, there's improving in quality and there's improving in record. I think both have to be the Bears.
Yes.
It's when every other team in the division won 11 or more games. The Lions can't get much better than this. The Vikings could get a little bit better, but I don't think that's going to happen.
The Packers could jump into the elite team.
But they won 11 games.
Yeah,
the
but
Bears won 5, and we're lucky to win 5.
Yeah, I mean, the Bears are the easy answer, but Green Bay was sloppy a lot of the year. You watched a lot of Packers games, you're like, that's not the team I thought I was going to see.
But the Bears, their biggest problem was disastrous coaching and culture.
Yep.
And that might be about to change too.
Yep. Who could take the biggest step backwards? Probably.
I'd say there's one answer here, and it's Minnesota. The Vikings got elite quarterback play from Sam Darnold for most of the year. the chances we get elite quarterback play next year are not great.
Yeah, it would be the Vikings. All right.
It's so hard to win 14 games.
Tony Ball. I haven't read this, so let's just see. 5:45 left in the first quarter of the Commanders versus Eagles. Like I said, it's going to be a Philly beatdown. With he wrote this during the game. With Washington scoring at will against the Lions, what does that say about Detroit? I mean, first off,
their defense had like a dozen players.
Yeah, their defense was gone. I still don't know what happened against the Vikings. Losing Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn and 3 other assistant coaches, Dan Campbell will have to do more than just rah-rah motivation and going for it on 4th down. The head coach will now have to coach. I predict the Lions will tie with the Bears, for last place in the NFC North. Vikings a middling second place team, and the Packers winning the division handily. What do you think? I don't think Detroit's going that easily.
I don't get the thought that Dan Campbell is not a coach, that he just sort of hangs out and like says go team and makes a decision to go for it on 4th down. As we said on the show a bunch, the hardest part of being an NFL head coach is building a winning culture. Most teams fail at that and fail perpetually. There's plenty of guys. I'm not saying it's endless. There's plenty of guys that are good with the schemes and can draw up plays. There are not a lot of guys that can be great leaders. I think it's a lot easier to replace a Ben Johnson or an Aaron Glenn than a Dan Campbell, even though it's very hard to replace those guys.
Yeah, I'm with you. Dan Campbell's, again, if you're ranking what changed in Detroit, I think Brad Holmes is 1 or 2, and Dan Campbell's like their partners in crime on this one. It's been amazing what they've done, and Dan Campbell is more a part of that than Aaron Glenn or Ben Johnson. You're hoping Ben Johnson does well in Chicago, but like Dan Campbell has been awesome. He's going to, and you know what also is the case, Ziggy, is he's chosen a lot of great people to be around him too. I think that'll continue to happen, and they have a great team. The Lions, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears come in last again. I wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings take a step back and are middling, and even if the Packers have a better season. But Detroit will be there. Like they will. All right, we have a few left. Benjamin says, I'd like to shout out Josh Allen, who wrote me a letter of recommendation to grad school this past week. Not the Bills, Josh Allen, but whatever. Just the minor detail. Well, I hope you get into grad school. Good luck, Benjamin. That'd be awesome. Richard Cheese. Do you guys consider the ND season a success, regardless of its outcome? Take this in whatever direction you see fit. 100% success. Amazing season. The roster was decimated. Tom Monroe, good friend, Lions fan. I texted Tom. He's a huge Notre Dame fan. You know, Tom Monroe, this is a shout out. If there's any Notre Dame people listening,
what?
Tom is...
ND won a championship. What more do you want from them?
What championship?
The Division I FCS championship. Wait, are we not talking about North Dakota State?
Yeah, get out of here. Get out of here.
Sorry, he said ND. I got a little confused. I thought it was North Dakota.
No. Tom Monroe should be working for Notre Dame football. I mean, what this guy knows about the recruiting cycle and the ins and outs of Notre Dame, like, unbelievable. But Tom's a big Lions and Notre Dame fan, and I was like, Tom, can you root for one team that has a healthy defense this year, like not decimated? And he was laughing at that. But with the amount of injuries we had on both sides of the ball, including the offensive line, this was an unbelievable success for Notre Dame this year. It would have been amazing to cap it off with the championship, and it was disappointing to see them lose. But after losing to Northern Illinois in week 2, to bounce back and, you know, get the monkey off your back and winning a big game against Georgia. I know their quarterback was out. I know Beck was out. But then beating Penn State the way they did and fighting back, not losing by 50 against Ohio State, and at least having a shot, even though it was still, you know, it's not a great game, but they had a shot. I thought it said a lot about the team and Marcus Freeman and the culture they've built there. Culture's important. You know, Jack can go on and on about coaching. Doesn't matter. We said it. It's like one of the stupidest things Jack has ever said on this show. And I don't know if he actually believes it or not. But it's just ridiculous to not think that culture and head coaching and leadership matter in anything you do. I thought Notre Dame had a hugely successful season.
I don't know how you could possibly say it's not. This was Notre Dame's first win in a big game since 1993.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. They had not won a major game in the postseason since 1993.
Yeah.
They didn't just win one, they won two. And even if this team were perfectly healthy and everyone were playing at their absolute best, in this new format, making the national championship means something. This is not like a few years ago where you can be TCU, make the national championship, get blown out 66-3 or whatever, and say, like, what did that mean? We had to beat Georgia. We had to beat Penn State. And I don't want to hear anyone saying, oh, Georgia backup quarterback. Oh,
well, I mean, I did, but
James Franklin in a big game. Oh, it doesn't mean anything. These are real wins.
These are steps to being the program. If you want to be an elite program, you have to beat Georgia with their backup. You have to beat Penn State. So I thought it was awesome. Hayden Perkins, could you all do a quick and honest evaluation of Shedeur Sanders? I was at his game against Baylor, which was an instant classic. Thought he looked amazing, but I don't see significant hype around him, at least for a consensus top 3 pick. Haven't seen enough of his play, I guess. Straight up, I don't know enough yet. I haven't dove into the Shedeur Sanders draft tape and everything yet. And I enjoyed watching Colorado games. That was a fun show. As far as the consensus top 3 pick goes, quarterbacks are always going to rise. The top rated QBs will always rise and probably even be overdrafted. I remember Jared Goff and Carson Wentz being debated, and Carson Wentz was being mocked at like 13 at one point. Who else? Kyler Murray too was a late first round and earlier on in the process. And these guys just rise up the draft boards. Like, everyone wants to take their shot at the quarterback because it's the most important position. So yeah, he's going to go top 3. Probably doesn't warrant it, but it's a weaker QB class and teams are trying to find their next stud. So I don't know enough yet to give an honest evaluation, but that's just what I would say is he probably doesn't belong as a top 3 pick, but he will be.
I actually firmly disagree that he doesn't belong to go in the top 3. You're going to see this in the pre-draft process. Shedeur Sanders is one of the most talented pocket passers we have seen come out of the NFL.
I mean, look, I could be totally wrong. Yeah, I could be totally wrong.
And most importantly, in terms of accuracy, he's the most accurate quarterback I can remember in some time. And here's the thing: if you're an NFL GM, there's lots of guys that can be very accurate and do a good job in lots of systems. Shedeur Sanders had what you had going to a terrible team in the NFL. A garbage offensive line that's going to give up 100 sacks. Shedeur Sanders behind that offensive line was awful, and somehow he's managed to avoid most major injury. He's an incredible pocket passer. People focus on the athleticism. I don't think there's a ton there, but he's a guy who can pass really well on and off platform, under pressure, not under pressure. And that's very hard to teach. Paul, you said it earlier in this show, like an hour ago. The most important trait in an NFL quarterback is a guy who can pass.
Throwing the football.
And yeah, he's not a great improviser. He's not an incredible athlete. He doesn't have a great size, but he's not Bryce Young, and he can throw very, very well. He reminds me a lot of Tua coming out of the draft, except without the injury history. And I think that's an exciting comp.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if that's what you're seeing, then yeah, he does belong in the top 3. I need to go back and watch. I'm going to reserve my right to evaluate until I actually evaluate.
Yeah, I'm just saying, keep an eye. If this guy can pass the ball, and that's what people are excited about. It's not flashy. Being able to pass the ball accurately on a decent, not great team, that's what he could do.
Okay, last thing here. My endless void S. Paul, you always mention your boss is Colin Cowherd. So my question is, what's your role within that show? And exactly what does Colin or any higher ups know about your YouTube show? As always, see you. And as I always say, see you boys in Green Bay for the draft. I don't work on the Colin Cowherd podcast anymore at the Volume. I got in at the Volume in 2021 when it was founded at one of the first 20 people at the company. So I've been with them my entire career. I was an associate producer on Colin's show for a while, and that was really cool. It was Zooms with me, my fellow producers, the executive producers, and audio producers, and Colin. So it was only a handful of us, and it was always a ton of fun. I mean, the Volume's filled with really, really nice people from top to bottom. And I've met Colin a couple times. I don't know if he'd actually recognize me, but actually he wouldn't. But he's always been very nice when I've met him in person or talked to him on Zoom. So that was really cool. as far as Colin has no clue the show exists. I mean, Colin doesn't, but the higher ups at the company
Colin
do.
Coward's not submitting mailbag questions to
No,
us.
Colin's not submitting mailbag questions, but the higher ups at the company do know that we have a YouTube show, and graciously, they're okay with it. So it's been a fun experience working there. Do we want to read Dobby? Dobby the Dominator. Sorry, he said, "What's your least favorite of the four major leagues in the U.S. for sports? NHL,
Baseball.
NFL. What do you say?
Baseball, MLB. It's that simple. A hockey game's fun to watch, even if I don't know what's going on. A basketball game, I kind of like basketball, even if the NBA is sort of on the down right now. NFL, obviously, we love it. Baseball, I hate the regular season. And I think playoff baseball is fun. But if I hate the regular season of your sport, if I can't get myself to watch it, you can convince me to watch any other game.
Yeah, I really like watching hockey, and the hockey playoffs are awesome. But I'm a bigger Yankee fan than I am Devils. So I would probably put NHL last because I do enjoy the baseball playoffs, but I'd probably put baseball. Yeah. Do I want to read the story from X-Pomsky, or should we just navigate people over there?
Read the story, Paul.
All right. This is the last thing of the mailbag.
This is the longest mailbag we've ever done. You can go a little longer.
He goes, time for another story as we approach the off season. Paul and Ziggy slumped on their couch, surrounded by empty cans of light beer and discarded purple and gold pom-poms. The TV screen flashed the humiliating final score. Rams 27, Vikings 9. Paul groaned. 27-9, Zig. 9. That's 3 field goals. The Vikings couldn't even pretend to aim for the end zone. Ziggy sat motionless, clutching his Vikings jersey like a lifeline. His face was blank, eerily blank. Say something, Zig, Paul pleaded. You can't just sit there like Kirk Cousins in primetime. Ziggy finally spoke, voice hollow. Maybe it's time. Time for what? Ziggy stood, his movements robotic. To become a Packers fan. Paul choked on his stale nachos. You what? Skol, Ziggy. Skol. Remember, you're supposed to suffer with me. Ziggy ignored him, pulling a Packers hat from the back of the closet. Paul recoiled as if it were radioactive. Take it off, Paul screamed. You smell like Wisconsin forever. Ziggy shrugged, already slipping into green and gold fandom. At least the Packers win, Paul, and they don't lose 27-9 to a guy named Puka Nacua. Paul collapsed to his knees, shouting, You can't abandon the Viking horn for cheese. What's next? Bratwurst Sundays? Just then, Victor the Viking burst through the door, holding his horn aloft. Ziggy, put that Packers hat in the trash where it belongs. Vikings fans stick together through interceptions, blown leads, and 27-point blowouts. Ziggy hesitated, but Paul grabbed his hand. We're Vikings, Zig. We don't win, but at least we suffer together. With a sigh, Ziggy tossed the hat into the garbage. Skol, he muttered. Paul smiled, wiping a tear. Skol, buddy. Now grab another beer. We've got an entire offseason to cry about. But little did Paul know, Ziggy now had a cheese twinkle in his eye. Meanwhile, Jack's just with his girl chanting Steelers, let's weld. This is what happens when I'm bored at work. That's a great story. Great story. I'm glad that we could help you be a distraction at work. All about distractions at work. Pretend I didn't say that if you're
if Colin Coward's watching right
Colin's
now.
Listening. So there you go. A long mailbag, but one that was very well deserved. And it's been a while since we've done one of these, so we wanted to get to every single question. And
we did.
We did. So there you have it. My voice is very tired now. You can probably hear it starting to go a little hoarse. With that, we'll call it an episode. We'll be back with more content coming out. Super Bowl week next week. We'll have the Super Bowl preview. Maybe we'll do another mailbag. Probably not quite as long. I actually also want to do the way too early top 10 contenders for 2025. Even without the season.
It's time for way too early segments. Yeah, we're here.
Yeah, we're here. I want to do that next week. So we're going to have a great time. We appreciate everyone. If you stuck around this long, that's awesome. Please remember to hit that subscribe button.
If you stuck around this long and you're not subscribed, what are you doing?
Yeah, everyone who's still here subscribe. So appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.